This was not approved by the Indian person I know, so I'm going to call it racist. This is Asura from Ogre Studios, developed on the Unity engine. And you can pick it up for 10 of your local currency. What is it? Asura is a top-down indie hack-and-slash game set in a fantasy world inspired by the richness of Indian mythology, even though their main character is based on a Muslim jinn. It features heavy roguelike elements and a unique procedural skill tree which changes on every playthrough. So let's kick off the CHAIRQUISITION if it will suffer through 1,000 years of torment. 1 chair means that's bleh. 2 chairs means that's meh. 3 chairs means that it's woohoo. And 4 chairs means that, oh my god, it's fantastic! You also have categories of doom, makes with the working, shiny sounds, controls, and fun. So let's kick this off. Ben, did Asura make with the working?
Oh man, over here on the AMD 8150, powered with a 980, displayed at UHD, running the Ubuntu 1604 LTS dot whatever the hell it's at this week. It works now. Let's say that. It works now. What do you mean, Ben? It's like, well, for the first 3 or 4 days after it launched on Linux, it didn't work at all. But they finally sorted that little issue. And, the initial launch, like the day it came out before it received that immediate other update, it caused my UHD monitor to power cycle. I don't know how the fuck they managed that. I ain't even mad, man. Kind of impressed. But currently, as it stands, in front of the chairs, everything works. Controls work, it launches, loads are reasonable. Nothing to report fun, so solid 4.
Yeah, I was about to pull out the hashtag Lestrader, it works for me, but I decided to spin this up on the TV box because I felt like being lazy and sitting on a couch and playing some video games. And it had some issues. You couldn't switch weapons with the controller. Some of the control inputs were noticeably delayed. But that was on the A1050-800K with the GTX 970 on Fedora 25. On Fedora 24 with the i7-6700K and the GTX 980. It works perfectly fine. So with that little bit of mix-up, I will have to give it 3 chairs.
Yeah, the first few times I tried to start it, it wouldn't start. Tried restarting Steam, didn't work. So I closed Steam, went to the games folder, started it from there, and lo and behold, it finally did its thing. But then, when it finally did start, it failed to recognize my multi-monitor setup and set itself to 2560 by 1440. So, no, you're going to get dinged the chair. This was on the FX8370E with a GTX... Pardon me, GTX 1080 and the running on Ubuntu Mate 1604.2, if I'm not mistaken. 3 chairs.
All right, well, that's 3 chairs to mix with working. Let's kick on over to shiny and sounds. Ven, did the desert sands of Asura blind your eyes with its shine?
That's racist, man. Check this out. It doesn't make a very good first impression because... they're not alone in doing this. I just want to know when people are going to learn how to encode intro videos so they don't look like absolute wank, which this one does. This looks like something on the YouTubes from 2008, if we're being nice. I mean, brass tacks, visually, you're looking at it right now. Let's be honest, gentlemen, this kind of looks like a mobile game. A really good-looking mobile game, but, we've definitely seen far better quality come from far smaller teams, newer teams, actually. Everything's kind of sparse. That's why it just really reminds me of a mobile. And, but, again, like I said, it's not ugly. Not much to the environments. You're in a dungeon, you get skull-fucked. More about that in the fun section. The sounds, they're there. There's some, the demon voices always remind me of, like, when people are trying to do their Vince Stone impression, they go, roar, 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 like that, but they're doing it in Hindi and all that, which kind of adds a little bit to the mysticism and all that, but it also sounds like, really, come on, you could have went to the voice thing, voices.com, and gave somebody $5 to do that. Call me. So, yeah, technically it puts stuff on the screens and it makes noises in my headphones. So, yeah, you're getting a Strider, 2 chairs.
Yeah, I actually want to see Ven being given a script in Hindi and have him read it out loud. That would be hilarious. I'm not even sure if this is Hindi or Gujarat or one of the other like myriad languages that exist in India. Because there's this combination of trying to think of it as one big homogenous place when really that's not the case. It's a subcontinent that's trying to hump Europe at the moment. But that's besides the point. The game actually looks a lot better than a lot of the games we cover on LinuxGameCast. There's definitely some polish to it. I kind of agree with the mobile comment that Ven made. There's definitely like a weird slick sheen to it that that kind of makes it weird to look at, but you sort of get used to it. The acting, because I don't speak Hindi or Gujarat or any of the other myriad languages in India, I don't know how good the acting is because I can't really tell what they're saying. Needless to say, the noises do come out of the headphones, so good on them for that. There's nothing really remarkable about the visual aesthetic. It looks fairly humdrum, so I'm only going to give it 2 chairs because it does an okay job, but it doesn't do a fantastic job or even like a really good job.
Yeah, as I've mentioned in the past, aesthetics in video games should serve to complement gameplay and really not much of anything else. In Asura, the visual aesthetics do just that, and I do mean just that. They are completely unremarkable, and the different demon people you play as are literally palette swaps from the same model as are most of the enemies. The sound, for the first few runs through the game, if you'd asked me what I thought of the sounds, I would have asked you back, are there sounds? And the moment I started paying attention to the very muted sound effects and extremely subtle music, I kind of wish I had stayed in blissful ignorance of said sounds. Because a meaty thwack when you hit an enemy can and often does go the distance between making the combat feel as impactful as, say, waving a feather duster at a concrete wall, or, you know, taking a jackhammer to said concrete wall. This game, unfortunately, does the former. 2 chairs.
Yeah, because you use feather dusters and jackhammers much in the same way by swinging them around. Anyways, up next is controls. Ben, you did control.
Well, the most recent update, which was today, kind of sorted everything out. The last update after an initial launch caused the up button on the X-Clone controller to always be pressed in that direction. So I was like, damn it, close it. With this game, you kind of get the feeling that you were genuinely doing the QA for this, you know, after picking up a copy. It was resolved after relaunching the game, like a lot of things with this particular title. And really, the only complaint I have with this, and you're watching the video, is why, for the love of flying spaghetti monster, did you bind movement and aiming to the same fuck mothering input? Rookie mistake there. That sucks, because logically you're trying to run and point, and it's just bad. It's a bad idea. You can't do anything to unfuck it right now. I mean, even if you want, it was like, what about keyboard? What about keyboard? There's a button there. Click on it all you want. There's no, but if you do look, like, we're going to release a beta with keyboard support with WASD, but you can't rebind the controls. Why not? Because fuck you. Maybe we'll get around to it one day. Yeah. Got to ding it for that. Now, it worked out of the box with the X-Clone controller. No real complaints other than the aiming movement being tied to the left hat stick, which, I mean, you can rebind, but you're still stuck with the movement and aiming on that. And considering that there's a constant mix between melee and your arrow point and shoots, that's a serious enough issue to throw it down a chair, ending up with 3.
Yeah, I always love when I start up a game and I plug in my DualShock 4 controller, little PlayStation 4 controller. I like it. It fits in my hand rather nicely. I love it when I plug it in, start up the game, and it says press A to continue, because there's no A on the DualShock controller. Lo and behold, this one actually does have correct prompts for the PlayStation style controllers. So you get a bite-sized Snickers. I did have some problems with the input on the Steam Box controller, or with the Steam controller anyways. Most specifically, it wouldn't let me switch my weapon in between melee and ranged. I didn't try it again, so they may have fixed that. But everything works fine on the DualShock controller, which is where I played the majority of the game. No real issues about the controls. Sometimes the placement of the magical spells is weird, and I have some issues with some of the mechanics, but I'll get to that more in the fun segment. Either way, this game earns a solid 3 chairs in the controls segment.
Yeah, no rebindable controls on the keyboard in 2017. You get dinged a chair. The only reason you don't get dinged 2 is because at least they give you the option to rebind the controller mappings. Yeah, you can actually do that. Not that you'd need to. I guess I am the most particular about the controls here at Linux Gamecast Weekly. And even for me, the controller bindings on the Steam box, got the mistress right here, they work just fine. I did no issues. So outside of the lack of rebindability of the keyboard, 3 chairs.
All right, well, that is 3 chairs for controls. Let's wrap this up with fun. Ven, did you have fun playing Asura?
Tons of fun. When I realized I didn't have to play it anymore because I was done writing on my fun section, which is kind of short, kind of sweet, a little bit dirty. Not really. Hey, initial reaction is this. Yeah, you're running around, you're collecting shit, you're leveling up. There's that leveling system. It's got the RNG with the item drops and all that. And you're like, oh, this is pretty cool, because I just dove in, downloaded, never read a word about it other than Pedro's like, hey, we got keys. Put it in, started playing it, and I was like, fuck it, we're going to review it. And kind of interesting, like, right when I started off, just like, this is kind of neat. All right, I mean, it can use some work, but I get it. You know, you definitely have, like, your, what do you call it? Just like your random dungeon crawler type combat with that arrows.
Roguelite.
Yeah.
Roguelike.
Whatever the hipster kids are calling it this day. And I was digging that, man. Got to the boss, the first level, you know, collected all my shit, broke all the things, and it's like, okay, I got this boss, right up to him. Didn't dodge his first attack and killed me dead. I was like, fuck, I fucked up. Take 2. Now, naturally, I'm on the first level, starts me back at the first level, not thinking twice about this. And I was like, yeah, I deserve this. Go through, spend more time, actually find the forge, build some armor, upgrade my sword, come kill the boss. I'm like, all right, we're getting somewhere. And I had upgraded some of my skills, and I was like, I'm digging this, man. It doesn't really have any story or anything to it that I give 2 fucks about. But, you know, I'm going to level up my character. I'm going to save him, and, you know, I like character progression. You know, I like story progression. But in the absence of story progression, as long as I got my character, it's like, just make some, like, wicked badass and just go curb stompatron and everything. Get to level 2. Play, end up getting killed to death, and I was like, all right, well, let's start back at, what? Yeah, it started me back at level 1. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, permadeath in 2017, a mechanic used in games because there wasn't enough room on the fuck-mothering ROM to implement a save system, but let's just keep dragging that shit out into today. Again, I like progression. I like storylines. I don't like live, die, repeat the fucking game. As soon as I realized that, I had to, just say to myself, well, it's my life now. It was my life for the next 70-something plus minutes as I live, die, repeat. And, yeah, fuck this nonsense. I don't like this mechanic in 2017. That's just like my opinion, man. And I'm sure yours is different. I look forward to the hate mail. 1 share.
Yeah, you see, unlike our giant 7-foot-tall baby, I don't really mind permadeath because I like roguelikes. But anyways, the RNG does seem a little much at times. Your plethora of abilities and your little sphere grid thing that you get is not consistent in between playthroughs. So sometimes you get really, really good OP abilities very early on, and sometimes you get absolute garbage. The enemy drops are inconsistent as well. So sometimes you'll be in the first level and you'll kill an enemy and he drops like this super badass weapon that lets you murder most things on the level. And sometimes you're stuck with the starting weapons until you can gather enough sana or gold. It's very inconsistent as to what they call it to upgrade it or build a new one. In some ideas, in some respect, I kind of like the idea because you never know what you're going to get. So you have to make the decision whether you're just going to do a full investment in your equipment and try and boost your character's stats that way, or actually use the powers and have a bit of an easier time. And sometimes you can balance both, but most of the times it pays more to focus on one than the other. But yeah, then the situation comes up where you get the shitty equipment and the shitty powers, and lo and behold, your first notion is to just, throw your character into the meat grinder because there's nothing left to do. The powers themselves have an interesting cooldown mechanic where it's based on the number of enemies you kill, which gives the boss monster an excuse to spawn a bunch of mooks so that you can use your powers more than once. I don't necessarily know how I feel about that. Because sometimes you want to play it basically stops you from playing it safe and forces you to engage in the permadeath mechanic, which I'm not sure how I like. But the gameplay itself isn't really that bad because you dodge arrows, you shoot your spears, your magic or your arrows, you mind your stamina bar, cut things up with your fast 0 stamina claws, or if you're unlucky and you get a decent sword that does damage but eats all your stamina, you swing once and you run away and you wait for the other guy to attack and then you swing again. When the RNG works out in your favor, it's really, really fun. And when it doesn't, it's just really frustrating. The bosses, I don't know. I kind of like the notion in Rogue Legacy where you could not have any more loot and have the level sort of pick off where you left off. You don't progress anything, but you have the opportunity to practice on some bosses. In this, it's like, oh, well, I died. I got to go back and kill this guy again. And then I got to kill. Oh, no, I can't kill him because I got really bad equipment. Time to kill myself and start over from the very beginning and so on and so forth. And it just becomes a bit of a drag. I got about 2 hours in. I don't really feel the need to progress any further. It's all right. It could definitely use some refining and maybe some better RNG mechanics. I give it 2 chairs.
Yeah. So what happens when you mix the Binding of Isaac with the original Force? Some pretty weird fan art. That's what. Because you would never get Asura. Because it's an entirely different game made by people completely unrelated to either project. There is one reason this game doesn't get 4 chairs for the fun, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the bland/forgettable aesthetics. As far as I'm concerned, mechanics reign supreme in video game world, and random generation as a gameplay mechanic is all very well and good, so long as it doesn't affect how reliably you can perform in the game. That's actually one of the reasons I stopped playing The Binding of Isaac. If you want to randomize the rooms, the enemies, or even the item drops, that's fine. But make sure you at least give people a sense of consistency in your randomness. The best example I can think of that does this really well is Enter the Gungeon. Even though most of the stuff in Enter the Gungeon is almost as random as it is in Asura, it does something which I think is imperative when it comes to roguelites, because that's what this is. They always give you a weapon, some armor, and a bit of health whenever you kill a boss in Enter the Gungeon. That gives you not just the feeling of being rewarded for killing an enemy, which is much harder than anything you've come up against up to this point, but it also gives players the tools they need to progress. In Asura, like in The Binding of Isaac, you can end up getting so shafted by the RNG that you don't get a better weapon, better armor, or even enough currency to quote-unquote craft one yourself. This overt randomness is often more frustrating than it is fun. That said, if they did what Forced Showdown did with its small levels and taking away your buffs in between the stages in return for a permanent increase in some stat and, healing you back to full health, it would cut down on the frustration quite a bit. But, frustrating as it was, I did have fun with it. So, 3 chairs.
Oh, hang on. Sorry.
All right, well, in honor of the RNG thing, number 1, it gets 2 chairs for the fun segment. I'm going to roll my D20 and see what happens when we get a score. We got a 16. That's not what the score is. It's actually 2 chairs. So, final thoughts, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, 2 chairs is pretty much scraping the barrel. You have to do something extraordinarily daft in order to pull a 1. Which, Pedro had an issue. First thing this morning, I saw this message. It's like, yeah, the latest update, it doesn't launch. It's like, what's this going to be like when I get back to the house? It's like, it doesn't launch. Anyway, it did launch. There's a good underpinning to this game. A lot of work has been put into it. And I think one of the biggest things that has hurt this game, going through the reviews, because I've since took some time today and look at that, The developers have a nasty habit of testing in production, which not a good idea, but I mean, if you need somebody to walk it through, you call me up. I'll show you how to set up a beta testing branch on Steam, so you can do a password thing and let people get into there instead of pushing that out completely untested and fucking up things. If it wasn't for permadeath, I mean, if you had an option is like get rid of permadeath and like let me progress and like build a character up, I would dig it, but it doesn't, so I can't dig it.
Well, truth be told, I had more fun with this game than the last two through CHAIRQUISITION combined. So yeah, no, I'm not complaining. I like roguelikes and roguelites. I like all of those. And I do see a difference in between those two terms. There is currently a debate in chat realm about what certain people should do if they use the expression roguelite. But yeah, no, I like those games very, very much. Enter the Gungeon is by far my favorite, and perhaps the most recent one that did it really, really, really well. This game isn't it, but it's still fun. It's just not all that great, technically speaking.
Yeah, it's just kind of a middle of the road game. There's some good stuff in there. Like the combat is perfectly fine. It's fun. But yeah, the RNG just like really, really puts the screws.
Especially in the skill tree. Don't randomize my skills. Oh yeah,
especially the skill tree. If you get the good skills, then spam those, and if you don't, then don't even bother. Yeah, the game is just all right. I'd like to see some better output from the studio. Maybe if they release Asura 2, maybe they'll take some of these complaints to heart and fix it, or maybe they'll do something completely different. It's good to see product. Apparently, the dev team for this was completely out of India, so that's kind of neat. We don't see a lot of games coming out of that country, at least in the mainstream or on LinuxGameCast. So I'm looking forward to seeing some further output from these guys, because this is an okay start.